When my brother Daniel stood up at the inheritance meeting and announced that all 7 Hawaii rentals were his, nobody in the room looked surprised, not even my father. The conference room at the resort hotel had been booked for the whole afternoon, though everyone clearly expected things to end quickly. My aunt had already ordered champagne. One cousin was filming little clips for a family group chat before the paperwork was even reviewed. All 7 rental properties in Hawaii are mine, Daniel said, leaning back like he was finally receiving something overdue. Olivia gets nothing. A few people laughed softly. Someone actually clapped. I remember hearing ice move inside a glass near me. Then my aunt said, "Well, Daniel always was your father's business mind." That hurt more than the announcement itself, not because of the money, because I had spent 12 years keeping those properties alive while everyone else called Daniel the future of the family. I looked at my father. He sat near the windows with both hands folded over a cane he'd only started using recently. His expression carried that familiar distant fog that had become more noticeable over the past 2 years, not severe enough for anyone to say anything openly, just enough to make conversations repeat themselves. He avoided my eyes. Daniel kept talking. "The estate transfer is straightforward," he said. "The Maui duplexes, the Kona units, the North Shore houses, everything's already organized." Organized, I almost smiled at the word. Because I had organized them, every insurance dispute after the storms, every emergency contractor call at 2 in the morning, every tenant lawsuit threat, every tax filing Daniel never bothered to learn existed. Daniel liked ownership. I handled consequence. The room continued moving around me like the decision had already hardened into reality. Then my father finally glanced up, not guilty, just tired. For some reason, that was what made me speak. "Dad," I said quietly, "you really don't know, do you?" The room changed immediately. Daniel frowned. "Know what?" I didn't answer him. My father's face tightened slightly, not with recognition exactly, but with the uncomfortable feeling that something important had slipped beyond reach. I reached into my bag and slid a thin blue folder onto the table. Nobody touched it. 3 years earlier, after the hurricane damage on Maui, 2 of the rental properties had nearly gone under financially. Insurance delays, structural repairs, county violations. Daniel had disappeared halfway through the crisis because his startup in California was at a critical growth stage. My father had flown to Honolulu, exhausted and overwhelmed, sleeping through meetings and forgetting numbers, while contractors demanded immediate decisions. I remembered sitting with him in a bank office while he rubbed his forehead and whispered, "I can't keep this straight anymore." At the time, I told him it was fine, because somebody had to say it. The attorney on the video screen cleared his throat gently. Until then, he'd barely spoken. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should review the operating agreements before proceeding with asset declarations." Daniel laughed once. "There's nothing to review." The attorney didn't react. He opened a digital file instead, and suddenly the room became very still. The restructuring agreement had been signed during the refinancing crisis, not ownership transfer exactly, something quieter than that, more practical. Operational authority, protected beneficiary designation, income control tied to debt liability. At the time, nobody else wanted responsibility attached to collapsing properties. My father had signed emergency management authority over to me because lenders required a single accountable operator, me, not Daniel. The attorney explained it calmly, professionally, almost gently. "The properties remain legally attached to the estate," he said. "However, controlling interest and operational protections were assigned to Olivia Mercer under the 2023 recovery structure." Daniel stared at the screen. "What does that even mean?" "It means," the attorney replied, "the properties cannot be transferred as assumed in today's meeting." My aunt stopped holding her champagne glass halfway to her mouth. Someone near the back muttered, "Wait." Daniel looked at my father. "You signed this." My father blinked slowly. I thought," and then he stopped. Not because he was lying, because he truly didn't remember enough to finish the sentence. That was the moment the anger inside me shifted into something else, smaller, sadder. For months I'd imagined this meeting as betrayal waiting to happen. But sitting there, watching my father struggle to follow his own decisions, I realized the family story had formed long before this day. Daniel was visible, charming, loud. He looked like leadership to people who never examined details. I was useful. Useful people disappear inside families all the time. Daniel pushed his chair back sharply. "This is manipulation." "No," I said. My voice surprised even me. Calm, almost detached. "This is paperwork." He started arguing with the attorney after that, talking faster as the room lost confidence around him. Every explanation only made him sound less prepared, and I said very little. That seemed to unsettle everyone, more than if I had exploded, because revenge would have made emotional sense to them. Restraint did not. Eventually, my father looked at me directly. "You never told me," he said softly. "I could have answered 100 different ways. You never asked, you never listened, you only noticed me when things broke." Instead, I said, "You trusted me when things got bad." He lowered his eyes after that. Nobody celebrated anymore. The champagne remained untouched on the side table, while relatives quietly checked phones or avoided conversation altogether. Daniel kept insisting the documents could be challenged, though even he sounded uncertain now. The authority in the room had shifted completely, but not dramatically, just undeniably. By the time the meeting ended, people left in careful silence, like guests exiting a funeral after saying the wrong thing too loudly. Daniel walked out without speaking to me. My father lingered near the doorway. For a second, he looked like he wanted to apologize, but age, pride, and confusion seemed to trap him somewhere before words could form, so he just nodded once and left. I stayed behind alone in the conference room, not victorious, just tired. The attorney asked if I wanted to discuss next steps. I told him tomorrow was fine. Outside, the Hawaiian air felt strangely cool after hours under hotel lights. The ocean sat beyond the parking lot, dark and steady, completely indifferent to inheritance fights and family mythology. My phone rang before I even reached my... A tenant in Maui, water heater leak. I closed my eyes briefly and answered anyway. "Hi, Teresa," I said. "Tell me what happened."